Okay, another essay. This one built around the word find. If you remember, in place of a chapter title, the reader is simply given a word, and then following that word, you get a description of the origins of that word. And they play a role in the essay that follows. So, find, from the Old English findan, meaning to come upon, to meet with, to discover, to obtain by search or study, but also with ties to the Sanskrit panthah, meaning a path or the way. It all started, I think, before church one Sunday, with a pair of missing socks and a single cheap penny loafer, followed another 7 days later by a mysteriously absent tie, and then the old disappearing dress shoe again. And then that shoe again, and again, and again. And each time, alongside a strong hint that keeping my room clean might help, my mom's suggestion that maybe I pray to find them, which might seem like a funny sort of prayer to offer up. Dear God, please show me the way to my faux leather shoe. Until we remember that prayer has always been about locating lost loafers and saving the specious soul. Since then, I've lost quite a few other things, though. So, to say nothing more of Sunday shoes and to say nothing at all of that one Little League playoff baseball game back in 1988, some wounds take longer to heal than others. Here are some I think worth mentioning. Starting with the more mundane objects, of course, all left behind on the elementary playground in that flurry of activity that is after school pre-bus boarding playtime. Like my coat and hat and gloves, my lunchbox, my backpack, a school project a time or two, a report card reflecting those lost school projects, a basketball, a football, a soccer ball, and a foursquare ball, just to name a few. All of which, by the way, very conveniently turned up the next day in the lost and found. This miraculous table just outside the main office, overflowing with a variety of those same things, but also trapper keepers and headbands and barrettes and wallets that were empty to begin with and headgear and once a pair of Transformers underwear, which everyone wondered about and giggled over, but no one was ever brave enough to claim. And comic books and wrestling magazines and stuffed animals and hope, always hope, lots and lots of hope. And then there was the time I left behind my costume for the second grade production of Annie, which I also found the next day, albeit flapping in the wind at the top of our school's flagpole, having been raised and saluted, rumor had it, by a couple sixth grade bullies who were going to lose a few teeth if I ever discovered their identities. What can I say? It was a hard knock life. Speaking of teeth, I've lost quite a few of those too. In particular, my two front teeth, simultaneously, which are pretty cool things to lose in terms of reaping the rewards from a generous tooth fairy, but really bad things to lose if the whispers and jeering of second grade compatriots is bothersome to you. Still, teeth are something to lose, sure, but they are not typically something you find again or even want to find again for that matter. Except I did find mine, the first few anyway, years later, carefully wrapped in white tissue paper, then tucked away inside a little cotton keepsake box with red crocheted hearts on it. Because sometimes, as parents, we hang on extra tight to things, especially little things, when we recognize in the moment that we won't be able to hold our babies forever, and that someday we will lose them too, to adolescence and friends and college and girlfriends or boyfriends and jobs and spouses and then children of their own. By the third grade, though, I was on a roll. In a glance, I became lost in Tiffany Williams' eyes, and she, in turn, in mine. So, naturally, we gave our elementary love a go, and largely succeeded too. Until fourth grade, that is, when I lost that love because she moved to a different school and coldly took it with her. Which unforeseen heartbreak led me to completely lose it in the ample arms and bosom of my music teacher. So certain was I that I would never find love again. And then came the spelling bee in the spring of that same year, about which I can only recall a few details. mainly standing there on a platform in the gym in front of a lot of kids sitting on the floor crisscross applesauce. Then seeing my mom standing near the back and feeling really sick to my stomach because this victory meant everything to me. And because I didn't want to look dumb in front of her or my friends, which, let me tell you, is a very hard thing to avoid when expectations are high and you then go out in the second round. I don't remember the exact word I misspelled. It was probably something like eudaimonic. I just remember that it was Greek to me, and when I started off by spelling U-D, the bell sounded and my heart sank, and my mom's heart sank, because that's what moms' hearts do when their children are sad. And I walked back to my seat trying not to cry. But you know what else I remember about that B, other than finally letting the tears flow as I turned the corner from the school to head home? Walking in the door and seeing at my feet this giant shadow, and on the kitchen table before me a mountain of glazed donuts, which were the reason for that shadow. And then, staked on the summit of the mountain, a little flag, the kind people plant to celebrate achievement and perseverance and bravery. And on that flag was a little drawing of a bumblebee and a message that said something like, "Congratulations," or "Be proud," but really meant, "You did amazing, and you are amazing, and I am so proud of you, son, and keep your chin up because you'll get it next time, you will, and I-L-O-V-E-U." Then there was junior high, which I will leave out entirely because I was basically lost the whole time, all the way up until my junior year in high school when, as the saying goes, I found myself. But strangely, I always struggled to find my car keys, which I often misplaced, it seems, more than a couple times a week. In those moments, I would sometimes pause long enough to remember my childhood dress shoe and then my mom and her admonition to say a little prayer. And sometimes I would even utter a little prayer. "Dear God, please show me the way to my car keys because I've got a date and it's really important to me and I don't want to be late, so please help me find my keys, please." But most of the time, I'm pretty sure I just rushed about, overturning stone and home, panicking, and then, upon finding them locked inside the car, swearing under my breath to invest next time in a car with keyless entry, which I eventually did, and which marvelous invention has since saved me a time or two, but only when I could remember the passcode. Then, at college, in one frightening, enlightening revelation, I lost my breath when I looked across the room and saw for the first time the woman that would become my wife. Take that, Tiffany Williams. And then my breath again, just 6 months later, when I stared into that same woman's eyes across the wedding altar. And then a third time, just hours later, on our wedding night, when we stood across from one another, close, closer, closest, then gave ourselves to each other for the first time, which some would refer to as losing one's virginity, but which term has always been a bit of a misnomer to me, because that consummation was more about finding something higher and holier, like connection and conviction and consideration and compassion and comprehension, and eventually 4 dark-haired carnivores calling me dad. Who, by the way, have on occasion caused me to lose lots of other things, like sleep and time and sleep and money and more sleep and a little patch of skin on my elbow while wrestling one of them on the living room carpet, and then another patch over my forehead while wrestling all of them in a collective surge of brotherly bravura, and then more sleep and my marbles and my patience, and more than once, I'm sorry to say, my temper, which is another thing you don't really lose, but rather choose to give away and can't really take back either, no matter how hard you try or wish, or how tightly you curl up into a ball on your bed at night and pray for the hurt to go away. Which last type of prayer, I imagine, is similar in its desperation to the one my parents must have offered up soon after losing their firstborn son, the baby boy preceding me, my older brother, Benjamin, just a few days old, whose heart was so big it could not be contained, and about whom my mom later had a dream wherein she found him grown up in heaven, and in that instant over tears and laughter made up for lost time. The type of prayer I too offered up many years later, not long after losing to drugs my dear Uncle Tom, who was the same age then that I am now, who was found in a dark house on a dingy bathroom floor where just minutes before passing, he must have reached out and gasped for life and comfort and second chances and asked if possible for the bitter cup to pass, and about whom I also had a dream once, wherein in the midst of a large international airport with so many people coming and going, I recognized him among the approaching crowd. "Tom," I called out, and he answered, and we embraced, my cheek against the cool leather of his jacket and in my nose that familiar scent of cologne. And he was beaming, absolutely beaming, having found at the end of his arduous journey more than a modicum of relief and healing and peace. And more recently, the same type of anguished pleading vocalized by me just under a year ago. And then again, and again, and yes, again, that one night especially in my closet again, when, after 20 years together, the girl who loved me back suddenly, inexplicably, no longer loved me back. Like a single cheap penny loafer disappearing into the dark of night, she was there, and then she was not, leaving behind in the wake of an unwanted divorce 5 very lost souls wishing they had held on more tightly. And then one in particular wondering if love could ever be found again, only to be taught by a flash of thought this one important truth. You are surrounded still by love, 4 carnivorous instances, in fact, all of whom will forever call you dad. So hang on so you can hold on to them. Of course, all this without mentioning the inevitable, the heavy losses yet to bear, starting perhaps with my strength, followed maybe by my hearing and eyesight, and then, like my grandma, my mind and my memories, all before culminating eventually in one final breath, a loss of light and the sinking of my eyes. After which friends young and old from near and far will gather to pay their respects and offer up from the pulpit stories like prayers, sentimental asides like, "Your dad was never at a loss for words, you know, not until you were born anyway," or "Your dad once threatened to knock my teeth out over a little costume flagpole incident, but we're good now, I think," or "I know your dad and I didn't always see eye to eye when we were married, but boy, did he love you. And me, he loved me too, I can see that now." And then, finally, this from everyone: "I am so, so sorry for your loss. But the thing is, I won't be lost. And when your time comes, neither will you. None of us. Not for long anyway. Because this whole plan that is our existence has, from the beginning, always been about finding lost things. And the lobby leading into heaven is just one big, hope-filled lost and found. That's how I like to imagine it anyway. Just outside the main office, overflowing with people. Friends, family, strangers, all alike, all transformers, having put aside their differences because there can be no irreconcilable ones in the kingdom of God. All embracing one another, opening up their fragile hearts like little cotton keepsake boxes while they wait to approach the pearly gates and seek their individual admittance, which everyone will accordingly be granted, but not before passing one final test. "The doors are locked," someone will say. "We need to find the key, it's missing." And just like that, the Lord, who sees all, will discover which of his children turned to panic and which instead turned to him, perhaps remembering in that instant their mother's admonition to pray over lost things. "Dear God, it's me again. Believe it or not, I am looking for another lost key. You are the way, so please show me the way." All this, though, only to discover in the end that there is no key. At which point I picture St. Peter appearing to address the befuddled crowd. Calm down, people, calm down. Listen, heaven has been keyless entry for centuries now. But you will need a passcode, or rather a password, because heaven, he might then add, has never been about numbers. No, just words. Words from the beginning, people. And each of you a unique and important one in the story of life. So, child, he will say to me when it is my turn, his burly arm blocking the gate, what is your password? My password? Yes, your password. Searching through the recesses of my mind, still searching, and then there it will be, nestled nicely within one tender memory in particular. Oh, yes, of course, my password. I'll take a breath. I'll clear my throat, and then I'll begin. EUDAEMONIC. Eudaimonic, followed by a wink. It's Greek. With a wink of his own, he'll bid me enter in, and I will. But only to be enveloped by many of the loved ones preceding me in death, who will, in their excitement, then take me by the hand and whisk me away down a long corridor, and then another corridor, and finally perhaps into a room just for me. And in that room, I imagine there will be a table, and on that table, a giant mountain of glazed donuts, and atop that mountain, a flag, the kind people plant to celebrate achievement and perseverance and bravery. And on that flag, a message, something like, congratulations, or maybe, you did it, and I am so proud of you. But certainly, above all, this lasting turn of phrase, which is always worth expressing, especially when you find yourself at a loss for words. ILOVE.